Hey, what's happening, Roland? Well, today's Friday. It's the last week of January. I do a lot of shiner fishing. I'm a guide, and I really have a lot of success right now. And a lot of the controversy is, if you come down here to Florida to catch a trophy bass, you want to lure fish, you want to shiner fish. Let's talk about the comparison between shiner fishing and lure fishing. I can give you some good ideas about it. Well, first, to look on the wall. Was a lure fisherman, and still am a lure fisherman. In the 70s and 80s and 90s, I set all the records, national records, winning Angler of the Year titles, winning countless tournaments. So I'm a lure fisherman. That means that I have the credibility, and I can tell you about lure fishing because that's what I've done for years and years and years. I've developed lures, I've designed lures, and I've had television shows with lures. So I know a lot about lure fishing, but I also know a lot about shiner fishing. So what's the difference between lure fishing and shiner fishing? Well, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But basically, when I'm lure fishing, I'm catching fish half as big. Okay. And basically, when I'm shiner fishing, I'm catching twice as many fish, number one, and the bigger, lunkier fish. But some people say, well, gosh, I don't want to lure fish or shiner fish because I just sit around and watch the float. No, no, no. I'm going to take you out to the boat and show you why. You just don't sit around and shiner fish. You sit around and you're working your butt off. It's a lot of action. But anyway, let's go out to the shop. Going through the shop on these cold front days, like right now, it's a cold front. Whenever I'm not fishing, I'm working on my turkey calls, and I got my turkey calls here, of course, and they're all after this Neil Koss call that's so famous, and so they're all but Neil's, that's a real expensive one. I'll make a replica, okay, and then they're all registered. I got a 500 registration form here, and I take a call like this one, for example, and it's all inscribed with the wood. And I make them up. So that's all available. That's what I do when I don't fish. Okay, but I fish about 4 or 5 days a week. Now let's just take you out to the boat, and I'm talking about both lure fishing and shiner fishing and the difference between the two. Now, a lot of people come down. They said, all I want to do is lure fish, and we'll take them out. We'll catch fish. We'll have a good day. But as far as a trophy fish, I don't know. Let me tell you what happened last week. Last week, of course, I had one really good trip, and I told you about that last Friday. The water temperature rose, and I had my water temperature meter right here. And all week it was down the 50s, and this water temperature was reading. Now, right now, see, it's a cold front, and there's a cold front here, and it's 53, 54 degrees. That's pretty cold. So they're not biting real good at 53 and 54. That's why I'm not fishing today. But on this day with Don Aiken, that was last week, we had 80-something bass. We went through 100, and we went through 220 shiners. We sometimes had 5 fish on 5 rods. It was pandemonium. Okay, that was a super day. I had a couple over 8 pounds. So that was the kind of day that you can have when you're shiner fishing. We even did a little lure fishing in the same time. A couple of days later, it had gotten colder, and I went with Brian Calvert, and that was a pretty good day. He caught 40-something by himself, and I think I caught 3. See, I don't like to shine when I'm shiner fishing. For example, I'm handing the rods to other people. I don't want to catch a big fish. I mean, I want them to catch a fish. So I'm doing everything I can. The only reason why I catch any fish is if we have 2 or 3 or 4 rods out and one of them runs all the line off, I got to do something to keep the line on the reel. So I'll sometimes have to catch a fish. So anyway, Brian's trip was really great. But then 2 days ago, I went with John and Rose Obelisk, and that was so cool. They're out of Ohio. And John caught the 2 biggest fish of his life, well over 6 pounds. He also had like 7 or 8 more 5-pound fish that were just beautiful, nice bass. He lives up on Lake Erie, and he doesn't see very many 5-pound fish. But anyway, that was a really good deal. Plus, we caught 60-something bass. He caught 60. I think I caught 3. But anyway, it was the best. Okay, the last 25 trips, mainly shiners, I've had people either catch their biggest fish of their life, their personal best, which is quite a few of them, but better than half of the people, or the other half had the best fishing trip of their life. And most of them say both, because the last 2 or 3 guys that I took out had not only caught the biggest fish, but they caught the best fish that they've ever had. So that was a really big deal. Okay, let me explain a little bit about why shiner fishing is fun, and why shiner fishing gets going crazy. I catch my own bait. I have the best bait in the world. I have oxygen tanks over there. I have big nets. I usually run 10 to 12 dozen shiners. That's like, say 120 shiners would be an average day that I'd use. And like this week, with that many shiners with John, for example, we went through all of the shiners and got bit on every single shiner we put out. And sometimes it was a mudfish, sometimes it was a small bass, sometimes it was even a garfish, but mostly nice big bass. And about half of them were the 4 pounds to 7 pounds. I mean, it was just a gorgeous size, big adult bass. Half of them, which is a bigger average than you'll ever catch on a lure. You'll catch fish on lures, and you can take little Cincos and catch a ton of little 12, 14-inch bass, 2-pound bass. But with shiners, they're just twice as big, let me just tell you. Okay, so one of the things that make it so interesting is that in the state of Florida, we can fish more than one rod. Now, when you're lure fishing, you can only fish one rod at a time because that's all you can reel. I mean, you can't really do much but one rod. But when you're shiner fishing with me, and you got 10 or 12 dozen shiners like I have, hey, I can put rods all over the place. I'll have rods. Look at this. Here's a rod holder. That's 6 rod holders. Okay, I can take a free line, for example, like this little spinner rod. And how many big 7 or 8 or 9, 10-pound bass I've caught on this little spinner rod, little favorite reel, 2500 series, 20-pound braid, a little bit of fluorocarbon right here. I'll take a shiner, hook it in this nose, and free line it. Throw it out there and just free line it. It's just like a worm. And then watch the line, and sometimes I'll put it back in the rod holder. And I'll either open the bail if I want. Sometimes I'll just open the bail and watch the line. That's why I use this blue line sometimes. Or I'll come back with a rod like this one, and I'll have a clicker reel. Now, this isn't a favorite reel, but they don't make a clicker reel, so I do use a couple clicker reels. And this clicker reel is kind of cool because you can hear the clicker. And so what I'll do is I'll have the clicker reel set up on the side of the rod, and that's just, say, 2 of the rods, and I'll have a float out there. Now, I'm a taskmaster because I want the guy to throw this thing right up close to the hyacinths, right up close to the reeds, for example. And if it's not real close, I'll tell him cast it again. So there's a lot of casting involved. Okay? And then I'll have another rod, say the regular standard casting rod by favorite. This is a 65-pound braid, a nice rod. I can use this as a free line, or I can use it with a float. And again, I'll put it in a rod holder and mostly leave it in a free spool. Now, sometimes I'll lock it down if we're drifting. So there's 3 or 4 ways to fish. You can anchor the boat, or you can drift. And one of the ways when you're drifting, sometimes I'll anchor the I'll use not an anchor, but I'll just drift, and I'll have the reels engaged, and sometimes they'll hang themselves. So that's one possibility. Okay. Now, let me make another statement. Women often catch more fish than men. There's a very good reason for that. Let me explain shiner fishing just a little bit farther. There's 2 reasons why women catch more fish than the men often. Is that, first of all, when I tell them how to do things, the women listen. They take what I'm telling them and really do what I'm telling them. Where the men are often experienced themselves, and they say, "Well, gosh, Roland's telling me something that I already know," and they kind of don't pay attention enough. And so the women pay more attention, okay, and they do kind of what I tell them to do. The other reason why women catch more bass, shiner fishing, is that they don't set the hook real hard. See, a man, when he sets the hook, he'll get out there, and he's a gorilla now. He's going to be catching the biggest bass of his life, and he sets the hook, the thing goes down, and wham, he's just setting it all to crazy, and it's just going crazy. And what happens, and why he's not catching them, is this. The shiner, say, is as big as my hand, and the hook's in the front, right? Okay? Half the time, big old 6 or 8 pound bass comes up and grabs his shiner. He doesn't have the hook. Hook's not even in his mouth. If you're a big, strong guy and just set the hook like crazy, boom, you pull the hook right out of the shiner's mouth, and the shiner the bass gets a free meal, okay? But if you do it properly, what happens is he hit it like this, and you pull kind of gently at first, just gently. You haven't really set the hook, you're just pulling gently. It'll kind of slip out of his mouth. The second, I'll say, stop, 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 stop. And the bass will come back 99% of the time, come right back. If it's not moved by the foot, he'll come right back and get it, grab it the second time. And sometimes the second or third time he grabs it, he's now got the hook. Now when you pull, you start putting pressure on it, it doesn't come out of his mouth. You're pulling. Hey, he's got it. The hook's got it. Set the hook. And we do set the hook, and this is 65-pound braid. We're pulling them out of heavy cover, heavy brush, and the heavy weeds, and sure enough, you need that heavy line. But there is a time to set the hook, but it's not at first. Okay, so that's just one of the things that happened. But the main thing that I wanted to tell you about was when you're shiner fishing, okay, you get some dead bait and some bait that is wounded, and you've caught a couple, and all of a sudden there's wounded shiners around. Every time you catch a fish, it's like the next fish over here kind of hears that, and he comes a little closer, and there's a fish over here kind of hears the commotion, and there's a shiner swimming around. You finally get him into a frenzy. Every single day I'm out there, pretty much I get into schools of bass, or 5 and 6 and 7 bass at a time. And it's quite often that all the rods go off. Now, when I was out with the guys the other day, the last weekend, and we caught so many fish, we caught 80-something with Don Aiken, and that was such a great day. We went through 200 and something shiners. There was times we had 5 fish on at one time. You're talking about pandemonium. Here's a 7-pounder, here's a 2-pounder, here's a 1-pounder, here's a 5-pounder. It's just crazy stuff. I mean, this is big time action. I mean, far more action, far more pandemonium than lure fishing. I'm telling you, this can be a lot of fun. And then the last day out with John said not only did he catch the 2 biggest fish he ever caught and the most fish he ever caught, and he was all happy with that, he also said that 5 times, we had 3 rods, we were fishing 3 rods. 5 times, all 3 rods went at the same time. And I'd grab one and say, John, this is a bigger one than you got. Here, take this one. And we'd be switching rods around them and missing them and getting them tangled up. But it was just a lot of fun. It was just a lot of fun. So lure fishing can be, number one, a great way to go. And I'm actually a fly rod fisherman. I'm actually a lure fisherman. If somebody wants to just lure fish, fine. But we're going to catch more fish and bigger fish on shiners. That's kind of the way it goes. And it is a lot of fun. And we're not sitting around just twiddling our thumbs. A lot of work to it, a lot of action, and really a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation, because we're fishing the best place in the whole world, and the trophies are right there. So if you want more information on my guide service, it's Judy M at fishingwithrolandmartin.com. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope I explained a little bit about cold fronts. I hope I explained a little bit about shiner fishing and showed you a little bit about lure fishing. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.